BPL-003 has a total psychedelic duration of under 2 hours. In fact, we looked at measures of, discharge readiness, and the majority of patients were actually discharge ready by 90 minutes. And the vast majority of patients were discharge ready at 2 hours.
Hello, you're watching Proactive. Joining me is Atai Life Sciences CEO, Dr Srinivas Rao. Srinivas, very good to speak with you. You recently announced positive top-line results from your phase 2b clinical study evaluating BPL-003. Could you tell us more about the study and what the data tells you?
Yeah, absolutely. Stephen, it's great to be back on with you. This was a trial that was in about just under 200 patients. It was a robust phase 2 study. It very much borrowed the design of Compass's phase 2b trial. So it was a single administration of either a subperceptual dose, which is the placebo of 0.3, an intermediate dose of 8 milligrams, and a high dose of 12 milligrams. So this was in folks with treatment-resistant depression. We looked at a primary endpoint at 4 weeks and followed them out through 8 weeks in a blinded fashion. And what we found was that the drug had very robust efficacy, an over 6-point change on the MADRS with the 8 milligram dose at 4 weeks that persisted out to 8 weeks. So, this answered a couple of really key questions for the space. And that was, if you have a compound or a product that has a short duration of psychedelic effect, what are the impacts on magnitude of efficacy as well as durability of efficacy? And what we saw here is that it was essentially completely equivalent to what you get with psilocybin, which obviously is much longer in duration. So BPL-003 has a total psychedelic duration of under 2 hours. In fact, we looked at measures of, discharge readiness, and the majority of patients were actually discharge ready by 90 minutes. And the vast majority of patients were discharge ready at 2 hours. And that, of course, is very different than psilocybin, which, the psychedelic effects there last between 4 and 6 hours, and LSD in particular, which can be 8, 10, 12 hours. So again, really robust results, very excited about them. On the safety side, no, untoward bias in terms of suicidal side effects, suicide-related side effects. And everything was 99% of them were mild and moderate in nature and no serious adverse events. So very happy with these results.
So what's next? Take us to the upcoming milestones for the program, please.
Yeah. So the results that were recently released were around the core study. There's also an open label extension from the study that gives another dose of 12 milligrams and then follows the patient for a subsequent 8 weeks. So those data are forthcoming, and we'll be releasing those as soon as they're available. We also have a smaller phase 2A trial that's been running in parallel, and that's given us some very interesting insights along the way. It gave us some of the original insights around efficacy. We recently released some data around SSRI adjunctive therapy. So folks who are on an SSRI, instead of discontinuing it, just administering BPL-003 on top of that. So we recently announced those was very good results. What we're looking for next is 2-dose induction. So providing 2 doses of BPL-003 over the course, 2 weeks apart, and then following them for a subsequent 10 weeks to see what the additional efficacy benefit will be with a second dose. And that's something that we're exploring with VLS-01. It's something that we're thinking about with respect to the phase 3 program for BPL-003, but again, not quite sure yet where that's going to go. So those are the 2 clinical trial readouts. We will also be talking with the agency. We'll be submitting an end of phase 2 meeting request in Q4 or before Q4. Obviously we'll be, once we've got some clear guidance and alignment with the agency, of course, we'll share that as well.
You mentioned VLS-01. Could you give us an update on the other pipeline programs, VLS-01 and EMP-01?
Yeah. So VLS-01 is in many ways similar to BPL-003. BPL-003 is an intranasally administered 5-methoxy-DMT, and VLS-01 is oral thin film formulation of DMT. So they are different compounds. They have different pharmacology. They have different, psychedelic effects. So we're developing that also for treatment-resistant depression. And that program is in a phase 2b trial that is anticipated to read out in the first quarter of next year.
More recently, platform company Recognify Life Sciences reported top-line results from a phase 2b trial. Could you provide an update on the program and the next steps for that?
Okay, absolutely. So that one is a little different than both BPL, VLS, and actually MPO1. Those are all our traditional pipeline, part of a traditional pipeline. Once the Beckley transaction closes later this year, we will own 100% of those assets. RL007 is being developed by Recognify. We own a majority of Recognify, if just under 60% of that company. So RL007 is non-psychedelic, just to be very clear about that. And it is a more traditional drug that would be administered on a daily basis. There was a lot of data that supported the notion that that compound was pro-cognitive in different healthy volunteer populations, as well as in a particular patient population. So we decided to develop that for cognitive impairment associated with schizophrenia, which is a huge unmet medical need, but also a very challenging indication. There have been a number of compounds that have attempted this indication and have struggled with it. What we found in our phase 2b, which was a very large study, about over 230 patients, was that while there was a numerical separation between the two dose arms, 20 and 40 milligrams compared to placebo on the primary endpoint, it did not reach statistical significance. And we looked at a number of other secondary measures and a similar pattern emerged. So there is a interesting pattern of a kind of a broad-based pro-cognitive effect with this compound, but because it's broad-based and not sort of concentrated in a single area, didn't hit stat sig on anything, but there was a numerical benefit. So, big picture, certainly, we believe, and other KOLs that we've talked to believe that there should be some additional development on this compound. However, considering it's kind of off strategy for the company at this point, it's not, it's something that we'll be supporting them through, some kind of partnering discussions, but we won't be, contributing any further to clinical development of that compound.
Srinivas, I hope you'll keep us updated on progress with all those other programs. Thank you very much for taking the time today.
You got it. Thank you so much, Stephen.
Atai Life Sciences CEO, Dr. Srinivas Rao.